We had such different experiences, but the thing that we both shared, and all of us shared, was that, gosh, we learned how to teach there.
Kirsten, I want to thank you for taking the time to come here. I mean, I've known you for several years now.
Many years.
Many
yes.
years. I think it was when we first. How many years ago was that when you were at BST?
I joined BST in 2001.
2001?
And I left in 2018. So 17 years I was at BST.
And I have to tell you, it was just a pleasure having you as the person that we dealt with on the administrative side. It was because you every now and then you're lucky enough to meet people, because I deal with different schools.
Sure.
And you deal with different personalities. But I have to say, dealing with you was such a pleasure.
Well, I loved working with you. And
so
seeing you on
nice.
a Friday morning outside the
That
front
was
door.
so nice. Yes. You were there when we changed the time, didn't you? To the morning?
Yes. Yeah, actually, you were only the mornings when I was there.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, I said, is this going to work? And it worked.
Worked perfectly.
It sure did.
Very popular.
And we still have it. We still do it.
Oh, good.
We still do it.
Good.
But we've got it down to only a few kids now. I think there's I think there's just 8 kids. 8 kids. And I love it.
That's perfect.
8 girls. And it's just beautiful.
And they love it.
And they get so much. I mean, it's just, I feel like I'm really able to teach them.
That small group size, you really can have an impact. So.
Right. Tell me, where were you born?
I was born in London, a very long time ago, right in the centre of London actually, in St Thomas's Hospital, which is right opposite the Houses of Parliament. So I'm a true Londoner, and did all my schooling in the UK as well.
Is that right? Are you the only child?
No, I have a brother and a sister. My sister I'm the oldest.
You're the oldest?
Yes, I am. My sister is 2.5 years younger than me, and my brother is 9.5 years younger than me. So
you were like his surrogate mother?
Kind of, yeah, I guess.
Are you really close?
We are really close. And actually COVID has been quite helpful in that respect, because to begin with, while the UK was locked down, we haven't had that experience as much, have we? But we Zoom every Sunday night now, the whole family. And of course, I'd speak to my parents every week.
Every Sunday night?
Every Sunday we Zoom.
And it started from the beginning of COVID?
Right from the beginning, yeah.
So for 3 years you've been Zooming every Sunday?
We've been Zooming, yeah.
How long do you stay online?
Well, to begin with, we were on there for an hour and a half, 2 hours, playing games, and when it was very intense.
Right.
Now it's more of a check-in, so we kind of go around, what have you been doing this week? I've got a niece and a nephew, and so I always want to hear from them, what they're doing. And so Charlotte, my niece, gives me an update on her schooling. She's 10 and a half actually, nearly.
Well, you can speak to all of them, So who you have so it's you, your sister, and then your brother who's 9 years
9 years
younger than you.
Yeah.
And they both have children?
They do.
Okay.
My sister has my niece, Charlotte, and so she's, as I say, she's 10, going into her final year of primary school in September. I can hardly believe it. And my nephew is 2 next month. So my brother's son is 2 next month. So he's just at that point where he's chit-chatting away. And
so you're an auntie twice?
I'm an auntie twice, yeah.
What about your parents?
My parents still live in the same area. They're both well. Yeah, they've managed to weather the COVID storm quite well. They're fanatical green bowlers.
Really?
Yeah.
Lawn bowling?
Yeah, lawn bowling. Yeah, they started doing that maybe about 5 years ago, I guess, and they're very, very keen bowlers. The club is quite near to where they live, so it's a nice social setting.
They do that at the YCAC.
Do they? Oh yes, I did know that.
I went there and watched that a couple of times. It was hilarious. No, for me, I thought it was kind of hilarious. The poses they would get it after they bowled the ball.
Oh yeah.
And they just hold it.
It affects the trajectory of the ball.
That's right. I thought that was so interesting.
It's lovely. When I go home, they're obviously bowling, and I sit on the side with a drink and a bag of peanuts and just leisurely watching this lovely green environment. I love it that they're outdoors and active. Super. Yeah. Super.
So your parents aren't that old then, I'm assuming?
Just turning 75. Yeah.
They're my age.
Yeah.
Oh,
they're your age.
Yes. I was to be 70 this year.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
Isn't it? So your father's just turning 75.
My mum just turned 75, and my dad will be 75 next year. So they're about the same age. Yeah.
Yeah, we're both baby boomers. We're all baby boomers.
Yeah, they're baby boomers for sure.
Big time.
Yeah.
My goodness. What about their parents? Their parents? Oh,
My grandparents aren't here now, but
okay.
they were also. We're all Londoners. Actually, my dad's parents were Irish, so that's where the O'Connor name comes from.
Yeah, I was wondering, but I think most people's parents, family is Irish.
Well, perhaps not most.
My great grandmother's German Irish.
Oh, really?
Yes, and I went to an Irish pub here. And there was a woman playing the spoons.
Oh, right, yeah.
Who's Irish. And she comes over to me. I'm the only black person in there. And she says, "You don't look quite Irish to me. What are you in here?" And I told her the story, and she just started laughing. No, the Irish have been everywhere.
Oh, that's right, yeah. My grandparents moved to England and then had their family there. So my dad is, to all intents and purposes, English, but he's actually Irish. So that's where the O'Connor name comes from. But, yeah.
My goodness. So tell me, going through schooling, first I want to know, what do your parents do?
They're both retired now.
Okay.
My dad was in advertising all the way through his career, and my mum stayed at home with us, which we were, it's we were very blessed in that respect. Not every family can do that. And then as we got older, then she went back to work, and she worked as she was finishing her working life. She was working in insurance, and then also she was the doctor's receptionist. So, managing the surgery and things like that. So, yeah.
All right. So when you were in school, elementary school, going through school, what sports did you like?
Elementary school, actually, the range of sports was quite different in elementary school, but I was always a really keen netball player. I loved sports all the way through, but netball was the sport that we did most of. And then in those days, the boys played football and the girls played netball. There was not an opportunity for sort of both to play both.
That's true.
Nowadays, they all play both.
That's true. What about academics? What were you like academically in elementary school?
Well, pretty good. I was in school in Kent, and in the UK there's still a selective education system in some counties across the country. Not very many.
What does that mean?
It means that everybody takes at 11. Everybody takes a test, and if you pass the test, you go to the grammar schools, and if you don't pass the test, you go to the comprehensive schools, which are for all abilities. So I know.
Whoa. Explain that. Wait. So they still do this?
I think there's 4 or 5 counties in the UK that still do this. Kent is one of them. And so they've got a school system where you, as I say, you take an assessment at age 11.
At age 11?
Everybody takes it. And
but up until then, the schooling's the same?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. There's private and state education.
But your private means our public in America.
Yes, yeah. And it is called public. Public schools in people do call them public schools in the UK, but private schools and state schools, and all the state schools. I'm talking about the state schools. Everybody takes an assessment at age 11, and then they go to either a grammar school or a comprehensive school.
What's comprehensive?
Comprehensive means
I don't know. Comprehensive, you explain. That's everything. What's a grammar school?
Grammar school is for the students who get the highest scores. It's a real controversial topic. In the UK.
But it doesn't seem like that's... So the name's really deceiving. The comprehensive sounds like it's the more in-depth.
The comprehensive school has got a range of abilities, let's say, and often they're stream students, so you'll have a grammar stream. The grammar stream is always the group that's the highest achieving or getting the highest outcomes. So there are schools in those counties that are called grammar schools, which are what you might say the higher achieving schools, and then there are the other schools. And it's very controversial. Exactly the face you're pulling is what a lot of people...
That's so interesting.
But it's not everywhere. There's only a very small number of counties that do that, prefectures that do that in the UK.
I don't know the system. That's
really different.
The system's different. Yeah.
There's a state system and a private school system. The private school system is different. People take entrance exams to get into private schools, and you can.
Those are the elitist schools.
Those are the schools that people pay for to go. The state schools, the public schools that the government pay for are what everybody's entitled to go to. Right.
So which one were you talking about?
I went to state school, and so my primary school was a state school, and we happened to live in Kent, so we could take it's called the 11+ exam, and I passed that, and I went to a grammar school. So that was
that was
still a state school, a state grammar school. So And my sister as well followed along behind.
What did your brother do?
My brother went to private school, actually. He passed his 11 plus as well, but went to a private school.
So your parents paid for him to go to the private school?
Yeah.
To make sure he got what you two got because you passed and decided to go to the state
When we
school.
went to the grammar school, yeah.
Grammar school.
I mean, he could have gone to the grammar school as well, but, circumstances change. 9 years is a long gap.
That's right, right.
Circumstances were different, and he went to a school that was a private school. So far more sports. I mean, actually, when he went to school, it was quite different to when I went to school. I was in school in the 80s, which was when there was quite a lot of unrest amongst the sort of teaching profession generally. So there were a lot of teacher strikes, and teachers weren't doing clubs and things like that. So, I mean, I had a fantastic time at school, but there weren't the range of activities that had previously been there and are subsequently there now. But I was very sporty and musical as well. So
what kind of music?
I play the trumpet. So I started learning the trumpet when I was at
trumpet.
Trumpet.
The trumpet.
Trombone is
this
the,
trombone,
yeah,
trombone,
yeah,
but
yeah.
the trumpet's this.
Trumpet's that, yeah. So I learned that when I got to.
But then what about the lips? Because usually you get trumpet lips, don't you?
Well, it doesn't last forever, but
yeah.
Yeah.
It depends on
if
how
you play
long
for a very long
If you
time,
don't play, and you'll
yeah.
see it. There's a crease here.
Yeah, I don't play very often now. At BST, I used to play in the Christmas concerts. So any time that I love playing Christmas carols and Christmas songs and things. So whenever there was a concert, I'd always pop into the orchestra and help out.
Do you still have a trumpet now?
I do. It's in the loft. It's not doing very much. It's sitting next to my guitar, which is also not doing very much.
So you do both?
I learnt the guitar just as I was doing my teacher training, because I wanted to be able to play in the classroom. So I'm not a great guitarist by any stretch, but I've got a handful of chords. I can play pretty much any children's song to enjoy in the classroom. But that's also in the loft.
So music, you enjoyed music, and what else did you say?
And sports, I loved
sports.
And I was more on the sort of English literature side of things. So that was my pathway through. That's what I did at university.
So then after you finished schooling, your primary schooling, then you got into high school. Is it junior high, then high school?
Just went all the way through school, so from 11 to 18, yes.
College?
Well, in the UK...
18?
Yeah, in the UK education...
You were talking about your age?
Yeah.
Okay, till 18, okay.
18, yes. 18,
and then you went to college?
Then I went to university.
Okay, university.
Yeah, after that.
So what did you do in university? What would you major in?
Teaching. I went to train to be a teacher. So I decided very young that I wanted to be a teacher.
How young?
I was 7 when I made that decision.
What made you... What
I just loved school. I loved my primary school. I loved school. I loved my teachers. I just loved being there. I loved learning, and I just loved the whole atmosphere of it. And I can't really remember thinking, I want to do this. I want to be the teacher. And from then on, all the decisions I made for my GCSEs, my A-levels and my university course were all based on that. I remember saying to my grandmother, I'm going to be a teacher, and she said, you're never going to be rich. And I said, well, money isn't everything, Nan. Money isn't everything. And she's right. And I should have listened. But it's been a fabulous and continues to be a fabulous career. So I'm absolutely...
When you learn to do it and you make it a career.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally.
Oh, I feel that way for sure. That's why I will always keep it as a part of my life. Because I think we owe it to those that come after us to show them. I like to tell parents this, that our children don't represent our future. They represent our past. Because the only thing we can teach them is what we've already learned.
What we know, yeah.
Now, on the other end of this, what we represent to the kids is their possible future. So we owe it to them, but most of all to ourselves, to be all we can be, to show them what's possible.
Absolutely.
That's how I look at it.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm doing with the kids. The kids every now and then say, how old are you? And I say, how old do you think I am? And they're usually judging it based upon my animation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm saying, that's right, because most people after they turn 30 don't they get this kind of like, I know it all, I'll take my time. Wow. So what were you like growing up?
What was I like growing up?
What was, like, just to me, in school, did you have to ever work while you were in school, let's say in your...
When I was at university, I did.
You did? What did you do? What kind of work?
I worked in a sports shop, which I loved.
What kind of sports shop?
Like a shop where you can buy trainers and tennis rackets and everything, like a sports...
Was it a name brand?
Olympus Sports.
Olympus
people in the 80s will remember. I think it's gone now. Certainly will have gone now. But I absolutely loved that job because I was really into trainers and really into sports, and I loved like meeting up with customers coming in and making sure they got the right pair of shoes, and the company would send me off to train on how to sell trainers, which I loved. So I knew all about all the materials that they made the soles of the trainers out of, and which ones were the best things for which. And I still actually in my mind think I'm an expert in that. Which is ridiculous because it was 20 odd years ago, nearly 30 years ago. So, but I absolutely loved it, and I was involved in setting up a new branch of the shop within the area that I worked. They were opening up a satellite shop within a department store.
How old were you during this time? How old were you?
I was 20, 21.
Okay.
So as I was doing my final years of university, and we had the opportunity to go to the warehouse of this company and pick out all like they'd obviously decided what they wanted the shop to be stocked with, but I had to go to the warehouse with my manager, and we had to pull it all and put it on those big pallets, and then it was all shipped back to the shop. It was the most exciting, really exciting thing. Or 50 tennis rackets, 10 of this pair of shoes. It was just.
It was your first time doing this.
It was just absolutely fantastic. I loved it. I used to be in charge of selling the exercise machines at the weekend. So there'd be all the running machines and the weightlifting things.
And you were able to keep up with your studies as well.
Yeah. I worked a couple of days a week. So.
Did you have a social life at all?
Yes.
But not.
Yes, I did. No,
Okay.
I did. Yeah, I worked during the day because I had Wednesdays when I didn't have classes, so I worked on Wednesdays and then on a Saturday as well, which was pretty standard for most people. But then during the holidays, I used to transfer to the local branch to where my parents lived. So I would go.
How far away was that?
Oh, an hour.
Okay.
Not far. I wasn't very far away from home. So then I worked there all summer in the same company. So it served me really well. It really served me very well, and of course I got a lovely discount in the shop as well, which was very exciting for somebody.
And passed on to your whole family, of course.
No.
No, but you understand what I'm saying. No, if you could get a discount there, you know what I mean? Not in a way where you're doing damage to the company.
No, I was very excited to be able to buy my Nike Air Max and be so excited about the first time that they came out. I mean, that's how long ago it was, but so I was excited to do that.
So tell me, do you ever get to travel a lot? I mean, so you finished college now with what degree?
I finished college with a Bachelor of Arts in Education and English, with qualified teacher status as well, so I could become a teacher. So my degree was 4 years. I did 3 years education and English, and then the final year was really focused on the final bit of education. And for most of that year, I was on teaching practice. And actually, that was a year that was really pivotal in my life, I think, because I went to university in Canterbury, in Kent, which was only about an hour away from my parents' house, but it's a Canterbury Christchurch University is renowned for training teachers, nurses as well, but it's an education university. And it's quite, I don't know if you know Canterbury, but it's a beautiful city. It's a very historic city. It's cathedral, Canterbury Cathedral's there. It's beautiful. It's a walled city. It's medieval walls, and ruins can be found all around the city. It's beautiful. And a lot of the schools around there, of course, where we did our teaching practices, we were always out every year. We were put out into schools to train to be teachers, so we'd have to plan and teach a class, and you'd partner with a teacher and so on. And as you went through your 4 years, it got longer. So to begin with, you were only there once a week, then you do a whole week, 2 weeks. And by the time you get to the 4th year, you take on a class for a whole term. So from Christmas to all the way through to April. So you've got you're actually responsible for the class. The teacher's there as well, but you're because you don't want to muck that up. But yeah, you're responsible for it. And all of our teaching practices had been in schools in kind of small Kentish villages, and you can imagine how that looked. Very domestic, very homogenous, which was great. And I really learnt so much from my teaching practices. You learn from getting things right, but also from getting things wrong. So it was just teaching a lesson and thinking, oh, that was absolutely brilliant. The kids loved it. The activity worked. You could see their progress. And then another day thinking, oh gosh, that didn't work. And they enjoyed it, but I can't see the learning. So reflecting in that way. But in our 4th year, we were given the opportunity. There was a connection with an inner London council called Newham, which is one of the councils, one of the London boroughs in the East End of London. And you'll know from many cities around the world, the East End of London is much less affluent, let's say, than the west side of London and so on. And this particular borough was particularly deprived in so many ways, and a very large refugee population, but also quite a lot of minority groups lived there. And we were given the opportunity to do a teaching practice, if we chose, there instead of in Kent.
Okay.
And of course we thought about that quite a lot, because Newham is a tough place to work. And I thought, actually, I want to give that a go. So I went, I mean, and I'm from London, so that wasn't an issue, but I went and did my teaching practice in Newham with a couple of my
And this is a new experience for you?
Yeah, teaching in that area. I mean, and I didn't live in that area
right,
either.
so
we lived on the, we're
right.
in the outskirts of southeast London, on the border of Kent. So it was quite different to where I was doing that teaching practice.
And I'm sure during that, you heard stories about it.
Oh yeah.
So I'm sure you had to be a little apprehensive.
We were very nervous. Yeah, very nervous.
Well, how many teachers went with you?
There was about, I guess, there were about 40 of us, I think, who did it. And then our cohort was, there must have been 500 in our cohort, but only about 40 of us actually went up to Newham. And we all stayed in, there was like a lodging place that we stayed in all together. And we all went to the schools near to that place.
How long was this? How long did you have to do this?
It was 3.5 months. So we moved up in January, and then we finished at the beginning of April. So it's a big undertaking to do that, but it was absolutely life-changing.
So tell me, what are the points that got to you that you'll never forget?
Well, for a start, behaviour is quite different when you're in an inner London school.
How was it?
Chairs being thrown and
wait.
If you think about the stereotypical inner London deprived
tell me
school.
what you saw. Not what I don't want to hear about what you heard. What you saw that you said, okay.
Well, that's exactly what I saw, and I thought, okay.
As soon as when your first day there,
there's very different energy and rhythm in some of those
now,
schools.
what caused that chair to be thrown?
I think a lot of what we saw the difference was the economic challenges that some of those families were facing, but also the demographic of that area. So the place where I was working, and actually Newham's got an interesting demographic generally, that they have this kind of arc of refugees through the middle. So you could be working in Newham and work in a school where it's predominantly Polish or Eastern European students, so predominantly white students.
Gotcha.
Or you could be in other areas, like in the south of the borough, were mostly Caribbean families, or in the north of the borough, which were mostly Pakistani and Indian families, and which is amazing in one area. Where I was in the north of the borough, and 95% of my class were either from Pakistan or India, and a lot of those families and a lot of those children were living in poverty, quite heavy poverty. But the thing that you did see was that families didn't break up. So there were a lot of siblings, and whether or not the mum and dad were, happy, they didn't break up. So there wasn't a high divorce rate. Whereas in other parts of the borough, there were. It was really fascinating. Wow. Really fascinating.
Because you'd come back and talk to your cohorts or the other teachers about the borough they were in. Would you take notes? Like when you guys got together back in your dorm?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then you say, okay, now this group, none of them have their fathers.
That's exactly.
Or whatever.
Yeah,
and you say, no, they're all staying together, but they're miserable.
Miserable, exactly. That's exactly it. And actually, I was in the north of the borough, and my best friend was in the south of the borough, and working in a completely different demographic, exactly as you just described. And we had such different experiences. But the thing that we both shared, and all of us shared, was that, gosh, we learned how to teach there. We learned how to behaviour manage. We learned how to take a child who really couldn't do something.
How? What did you do?
When children are behaving naturally, because that's their default, you're not having to necessarily behaviour manage. You're not having to find strategies that engage students. You're not having to really go above and beyond to really get their interest. Right. Because if you're dealing with poverty outside of school, I've got to do quite a lot to get you interested in you're thinking about what's happening at home. I've got to really get your interest. Whereas if you're at home, everything's, smooth and plain sailing.
Like you come to school, so happy,
you come to school. Exactly, you can focus.
Energy, right.
But not every child's got that. So when you're in a school like that, you've really got to be able to teach. You've really got to.
How did you do it? Did you come in with whistles and bells? Or
no.
Did you have a big slap?
Maybe to begin with, the tap dancing on the table. What's going on here?
Yeah, right.
No, I think it's about relationships and it's about trust. They have to trust that you've got them and that you're there for them and that you're not going anywhere.
For your group, how did they find out that they could trust you? What do you think you did?
I think consistency, and also feedback. I think you're constantly saying to them, look, you're doing this really well, let's work on this now, and giving them that dialogue.
Didn't they ever get nasty with you? When you say you're trying to be nice, but no one's been nice to them.
Nobody had been nice to them. It's just they're just in challenging situations. And yes, sometimes there were moments when it got hairy, let's say. But actually, genuinely, I think when kids can see that there's somebody, I'm invested in you, like I'm here and I'm not going anywhere. And the other thing with London schools is because it's tough, there's a lot of turnover of staff and there's a lot of temporary staff. Right. So there's a lot of covered teachers coming in from different areas of the world, and that unsettles students as well. And I think if you're there and you're really committed to it, and I was young, I was in my 20s, so and I taught 10 and 11-year-olds, so they're not that, it's not that different.
Almost they're getting there.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that presents its own challenges.
Were all of the other people in your group the same age? Yeah. Were they dealing with the same age kids?
No, we were doing all different. So some when you train to be a teacher, you choose which sector you're going to train in. So you can do, I did 7 to 14. Right. Some people do 5 to 7, and some people do 3.
I see, I understand. Okay.
So some people are in the younger year groups, but of course with older kids, that's when you see the hormones kicking in, and I was very lucky.
But you didn't do them. You only dealt with the kids. You said 8 to 11? Or?
I trained for students 7 to 14.
7 to 14.
Actually, when I first started teaching, I taught, my first class were 10 and 11-year-olds for the first 3 years of my teaching career. And then I moved school, just to a school around the corner. I went from this enormous Victorian building, which was built in the 1890s, with all its accompanying beautiful features and so on, and the problems as well, where the windows were this high. I couldn't see out the windows because that was the Victorian way, and of course nor could the children, but to a school around the corner, and that school was a 3-form entry, so 3 classes per year group, so it was a big school. And then I went round the corner to a small school that was built in the 70s, so you can imagine those 70s eyesores with the architecture wasn't at its best then, let's say. And it only had 1 class per year group, so it was a much smaller school. And when I moved there, I went from teaching 10 and 11-year-olds to teaching 4 and 5-year-olds. That was quite the experience, but I absolutely loved it. I loved it. I all through my career, I did both. I did younger students and older students, and they've got different merits.
Right. But back to Kent. What happened in Kent? It was Kent, the area that you went to?
I moved from Kent to Newham, which was in London.
That area.
Yeah. So that was a big challenge, but I really felt like we all felt that we really learnt our skills there. Mm-hmm. You've got to be on your game, and if you can do it there,
you can do it anywhere.
That's exactly what we felt, and it's proved to be true actually.
Right. The rest of the stuff was a piece of cake, because they think they're doing better. No, I've seen worse.
It's different, yeah, exactly. Yeah. It was a real baptism of fire, really. But also the advantage of working in London is that the government, because there's so many deprived areas within London, particularly that East End side of London, they put a lot of money into teacher training, and they often do research for projects they're bringing in. They'll put that into schools in the East End of London first. So an example would be 20 odd years ago now, they brought into something called the literacy strategy and the numeracy strategy for how teachers should be teaching English and maths. And before it became the strategy, the published required documents, it was called the literacy project and the math and numeracy project, and we did that before any of the other schools did it. So we had the training, and we did all the evaluations and told them this works really well, this doesn't work well, but our training was going boom, like literally hands-on trying this, and we could see the impact. And that's the other thing. When you look at outcomes for schools across London, there's league tables. They publish league tables for the test results at the end of the primary school, and of course Newham was always right at the bottom. They'd always get really low scores, and of course other boroughs were legendarily always at the top, of course, and that was very disheartening until you actually looked at the data in a different way and you looked at value added. So we were getting children in who were really low and they were leaving at the expected level. Whereas schools on the other side were getting children in who were here and were leaving here. We were getting them here and they were leaving here. And so when you looked at value added, which schools were adding more value, we were right at the top. And that's what gets you out of bed. That's what brings you into school. This child came in miles below where you'd expect them to at a 5-year-old, and when they left, they were absolutely where they should be at 11. And that's.
But you only had 3 months.
Oh, I'm talking about when I was teaching.
Oh, you're talking about when you really actually started teaching.
The actual 3 months was, that's when I absolutely fell in love with working up there. So I very quickly decided I'm not going to go back to a career in Kent, I'm going to stay here. So I got a job in the school round the corner from where I did my teaching practice. And
the same type of kids?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was just literally around the corner, so the same demographic, and loved it. Made some really fabulous friends.
And how long were you there?
I was at one school for 3 years, and then I moved to another school for 4 years, and then after that I moved to Tokyo. And the next chapter began.
This is real quick. That's what I was going to ask you. That's a perfect jump. So what did you do as soon as you got to Tokyo? And how did you come here?
Yeah, why did I come here? That's a really good question. Well, interestingly, the second school I worked at, I was a mentor to newly qualified teachers. So when they came in, it was my role to work alongside them and support them in their development. Because when you're a new teacher, you still need to continue developing. And one of the teachers came in and she did a couple of years, 2 or 3 years with us, and then she decided to go and work abroad. And she went to a school called the British School in Tokyo. And I was just kind of...
What year was this?
This was, must have been 1999 or something like that.
I probably knew it because we've been there ever since.
You probably
3
would.
years.
Yeah,
I had my sons there from the 3rd year it opened.
Oh, you probably would know her. Yeah, and she taught the younger students as well. So anyway, so she applied for a job and went to Tokyo. And of course I was, that's interesting. And it just kind of must have just stayed in my ear. Because I'd always been kind of fascinated with Japan, not necessarily in a very conscious way, but I my curtains had kanji on them, and I really loved, just the artistic. It's something, I don't know what it was, but who knows? Bigger, the
Had
world.
you travelled a lot prior to coming here?
I'd never been to Japan. I had been to Hong Kong and I'd been to Singapore, but I'd not been to
Japan.
Japan.
Asia?
I'd been to Asia, yeah, not a lot, but I'd been on holiday, not to actually work.
And you preferred the Orient, or did you go throughout? Well, Europe, you're right.
We did a lot.
Europe.
Yeah, I did a lot of Europe and America as well, and then came over to Asia and really loved it.
Okay.
But that was a few years before I came here. But after I'd been teaching for 7 years and I'd become the maths coordinator and the science coordinator in my school, so I was leading that, and I was a leading maths teacher, so people would come and watch me. I was doing all that, and I thought, actually, I'm ready for another role. And I thought, I was looking and seeing if where's my next role. Couldn't quite find what I was looking for, and in those days nothing was online, of course. We had the newspaper on the table in the staff room, and the Times Education Supplement was where they advertised all the teaching jobs in the country. And at the back was the international section, and of course I'm sitting in the staff room having a look, and this advert popped up: British school in Tokyo looking for quartet leaders. You probably remember that we were in quartets, which was just sections of the school. Okay. And I thought, oh,
is it called that in England too?
No. It was just
totally random. Just unique to you. Right.
Totally unique. And I thought, oh, that just leapt off the page. And first of all, I emailed to say, when it says quartet leader, that means like department head, not leader of a small group of stringed instruments, right? Right. Or I applied for the wrong job. And they said yes, so I applied. I only applied for one job.
Which was?
This one. I just applied for one job overseas and went for the interview and got it. And that was in January 2001. I got the job confirmed in February, and then I moved in August, much to my family's surprise.
I'm sure. They didn't want to let you go.
They were very surprised.
Your first girl, come on.
And I was just,
And you're nervous and excited at the same time?
Both.
So what did you think you were going to say? What did you think Japan was going to be like before you came? I mean, what did you...
Oh, God, honestly, things like...
what did you have before you came? Because we didn't have online.
No.
There was nothing for you to see. Or you could go to the library, which I'm sure you probably did once or twice. What images were you expecting to see when you came here?
In my head, I had Hong Kong. That was my nearest point of reference.
Which
and
is very different.
Totally different to here.
That's like chaos meets
totally high rise, everything. And I think the two things.
The smells, everything.
Yeah, everything. And I think in my head I remember two things being in my head. I wonder if there's bread in Japan. I mean, how ridiculous is that?
No,
and the second one is whether I would be living in one of those kind of tenement buildings with laundry hanging off and the air conditioners kind of hanging off the balconies and stuff. And that's what I had in my mind that I would be coming to. But fortunately, I had this colleague who was still at the school at the time, and so I was able to be in touch with her, and she, described more. Yeah, you're not going to be in one of those buildings or anything like that. And so, I literally packed up my flat, sold my car, and.
What impressed you the most when you got here? What were some of the first impressions?
Heat was the first one because
Okay.
we arrived
Humidity?
in August. Oh God, yeah, completely. Because coming from.
But
the
you
UK.
get that in Hong Kong. But you never went there during that time.
I did. I was there in the summer, but only for
you missed it,
5 days or something. I wasn't living in it, and also aircon in places. Aircon in Singapore and AC in Singapore and Hong Kong is so high.
Tell me about it. You walk into a freezer.
Even if you walk past a door, you feel the blast of it. So coming here, I was really surprised at that. And do you know that the image I've got of when we first flew into Japan, when you fly into Narita and you see all those kind of green, you see all the golf courses for a start, but all those kind of green mounds, that's really vivid in my memory of, wow, the landscape is just so different, so different from flying into the UK, certainly into London. But I fell in love with it really quickly. I didn't have culture shock, I don't think. I was just excited the minute I got here. And I made a really great group of friends, and we settled into sort of sociable life, let's say. And of course, the school's really great. When you come out with a school, you're not. That's right. You're in a structure.
You have your own structure, right?
Yeah,
you can create your own environment in a way.
That's right. And the school puts in place kind of scaffolds for you. So you're near to other people where you live, and they brought us into, we'd got there on that first day. We went home, we were dropped off, and we had to get our way back to Shibuya and meet at Hachiko. It's like, oh my God, I got on the train in the wrong direction. All of these things that you do. But very quickly you're forced to do it because you've got to start work.
That's right.
But you're not having to do most of that on your own. You're actually in a little cocoon, the BST cocoon, or the international school cocoon.
Cocoon, that's true. I always tell people when they come here that you're going to go through culture shock after you've lived here for 1 year and go back to wherever you came from and realize what you learned to put up with.
That's exactly
they think it's coming here.
No, it's the other.
It's living here and going back to where you came from and realizing, I used to think that was normal. Yeah. That's the stuff of movies. Yeah. That drama, the tension, the uncertainty.
Yeah.
Some people love that, and they think this is artificial. I said, no, this is humanity at its best.
I totally agree.
That
even to the extent
hard.
of airport.
No matter what convenience store, you get treated better in convenience stores here than you do in the finest hotels or jewelry shops.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Service here is second to none in the world, totally.
And they seem like they love doing it. Mm. Smiles on their face. No one has a bad day.
And even if they don't love doing it, it's about service.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I had culture shock going home, going into Heathrow.
And you go back and you go, and you become, your antenna become even more intense, and you start becoming reactive. And so I used to be normal in the situation. Now I can't. What? And when the server comes up and throws your stuff on the table, and you go, it really shocks you. That's why I tell people, after you've been here for a year, go back. I don't care where in the world. Go back to Hong Kong. It doesn't matter where you go.
You'll realize.
You're going to realize what you learned to put up with.
Yeah.
It's not right.
For me, it's the airport. It's always the airport coming, and you get off the plane and you go in and you think, oh, it's just filthy in here. And then you come back to Narita or Haneda.
It doesn't matter where.
It's spotless.
I know.
I know.
And you think, it can't be phony. This has to be real. And you're looking for the graffiti or something. And you're thinking, even that's neat.
Even that's beautiful. It's art.
It's nice. It's not a bunch of litter around it. The people aren't impoverished. You can frame it.
It's been put there deliberately because this is the skateboard area.
That's right. There you go.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. Do you plan on living here indefinitely?
Yeah, for the moment. Yeah, we live here until we're not happy here. I mean, everywhere's got its pros and cons, though.
Doesn't it?
You know,
The more
it's
you
not
travel, the more you
perfect
realize
here.
that no.
Nowhere's perfect. You know, politics are not perfect.
You have to make it happen inside.
You do. And you have to make the life that you want. There's pros and cons to living here. One, you know, the biggest one being the weather. I'm British,
Oh,
you know, I'm used to rain,
the
but
rain is
there's
the
blue sky. Winters with blue sky. Every single day I look, it's blue sky again.
And not just that, the moderateness of the weather here. You get a little bit of snow.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
When it's autumn, you get a little bit of that.
And
the
you need the rain.
It gets hot, but it's only for a couple months or something.
You can handle it.
You
Put
know,
your flip-flops on.
rain a little bit.
Yeah.
It's so moderate, but you get on 4 seasons.
Oh,
I love this.
I talk about the weather, really overly talk about the weather. I really appreciate that. But no, I just find society here and people's commitment to each other, the way things work and the way people are respectful of each other. And we all know, you know, there's a veneer, and you know, if you lift the lid, and in any country that's the case.
That's the one thing.
But generally, you know, people are very non-intrusive on other people's lives. And I think if, as you know, foreigners being here, if we can learn that and contribute in that way and make sure we're not interrupting life here for other people, I would like that to be in every country. I mean, I feel about that.
Isn't that the truth?
I feel about that with the education system. If we could take the best of both worlds, a Western approach to thinking and creativity, to the discipline and collegiate approach to education here, if you could combine those, it would be perfect.
When you came over here, you started teaching the British school.
Yeah.
And then you worked your way up, or did you come in that position to start?
I did. No, when I first came here, I was head of Key Stage 1, quartet leader, but
right.
year 1 and 2,
Okay.
and I did that for 5 years. And I had a team of 8 teachers, and there was about 150 students in the 2-year groups together. And I did that for 5 years, and then I was promoted to become the deputy head. And I did that for 6 years, and at the beginning of that we had a new head teacher who came in, who I absolutely loved working with, and she taught me so much about educational leadership. It was real on-the-job training, just absolutely profoundly brilliant. And after I did that, we worked together for about 6 years, and I started to think, actually, I think I'd like to be a head of my own school now, not the deputy. And so I was starting to look, and she decided it was time to move on, and I applied and became the head teacher of BST. The primary school, yeah.
Right.
And I did that for 6 years.
Just the primary, it wasn't
primary.
both?
Primary. When I was deputy head, I had a small period of time when I was the deputy head of the whole school, but it was at that time when the leadership structure changed, and we had a principal and a head of primary and head of secondary.
That's right.
When the school grew. When I first went to BST, there were 400 students in total.
That's right.
When I left, there were 1,100. 630 in the primary school.
That's right.
So it had just grown and blossomed so much.
You know what they're planning on doing in the new school? You know how many students they're planning on having? 900.
Oh yeah, I do know that.
It's going to be bigger than the secondary.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, and just around the corner.
That's right across the street.
Yeah, I did a lot of the planning for that.
Right. So you ended up being over in that section. You were over the elementary school.
Yes. So the students from age 3 to 11, and when we took over, there were 450 students in the primary school, and by the time I left, there were 630. So we'd grown the primary school. So it started off with 2 and 3 forms per year, classes per year group, and when I left, it was 4 form. So I was delighted. I loved my work at that school.
So what did you do when you left there?
Yeah, that was a wrench.
You disappeared for a while.
It was a wrench. Yeah, it took a long time to make the decision. It took me about 2 years to decide that it was time to move on, and not because I didn't love being there. I loved being there.
Oh, they could tell.
And I still do.
The way you greeted everyone coming in. I used to love coming past you, watching you greet everyone, because you're just right up, you're just so happy, bubbly, and you knew how to manage it so that everyone felt like they got some of your time. You never ignored anyone, and when they thought that they weren't noticed, you'd reach around this corner and get them. This woman is Mom. Look at her.
I loved that, but that's the head teacher's job.
I believe
you know,
that.
it's connecting in all different directions, and that's why it's
doing.
exhausting.
Yes, it can be.
It was, but no, I knew that I'd been at the school for, I was there for 17 years, and you keep developing and improving things and moving things forward. We'd implemented new curriculums and new assessment, and then you get to the point where you think, I I'm not sure where to take this next, or what I can do next. And many head teachers stay in their job for 25 years. I just knew that I couldn't take the school to its next era, and I was. If we'd been moving into the new building sooner, I would have loved to have taken the school into that, but it just was such a long. I couldn't wait. It was just too long. So I decided that I could, and as I was ahead, and even when I was a teacher at BST, I could see that there was a gap in Tokyo actually for support services for families, because I did a lot of work with families coming in to talk about, raising bilingual children, or transfer to other schools, or, I'm worried about my child's progress, all of these kind of things which are part and parcel of headship. But sometimes families need that outside of school, because I would be having, wider educational philosophy discussions with families who were deciding what kind of schooling they wanted for their children. And actually, sometimes coming into school, that's not always the best place to do that. So I could see there was a gap out there for an educational services company. And so the idea of Quest, my company, was born. And Quest stands for Quality, QU, Education Services and Tutoring. So that took a very long time to come up with, as you can imagine.
And when did you establish it?
I established it in 2018, so it was incorporated before I left BST, because I knew when I left I needed to have that all kind of running. I didn't do any training or anything, but it was ready as soon as I left to pick up. So I fully intended, when I left in July 2018, to have a couple of months of just laying in a dark room recovering, but it didn't work. It didn't happen like that. Very quickly people were coming to, I did a big phonic program that summer, and we did a writing program as well, very quickly. So it was
so your focus, Quest's focus, is to get people to bridge that gap, so people that have their kids in school, they might be having some other issues themselves.
Yeah, it's all different. We've got different range of services. So sometimes I have parents coming to me to talk about, I'm raising a bilingual child, they're 2, what should we be doing? So we talk about those kind of things. So they come for consultations. Other times parents come to us and say, my child's really struggling with their maths. Can you help get them back on track? And that's my goal. That's our goal. Actually, for tutoring, what we want is to get children back on the rails, as it were, so that they're successful in school.
Do you have a staff?
Yeah, we have a team of 10 tutors that connect work for us, and I meet with families. They come to us, and then I meet with them, and we talk about, tell us what's going well, what's not going so well. We have that kind of conversation, and while we're talking, I'm thinking about my tutoring team, which tutor's going to be the best match here, and then we plan a program for that child to get them back on track. And some students, it might be, I'm really struggling with fractions. 10 sessions, sorted, they're fine, right, they're back on track, off they go. Other students then say, actually I'm also struggling with algebra or whatever it is, and we do all different subjects. So maths is one of them, but actually more of the students come to us for English.
Is this strictly for students?
From age 5 to 18.
Okay,
so
5
we,
to 18.
and most of our students are in the middle of that, but we do have younger students, and we've got a couple of phonics group classes for students who are bilingual, perhaps even native English speakers, but they're in Japanese system, which is great for them. They're learning Japanese really authentically, but want also to have a really solid foundation of learning to read and write in English, which they will get some of in the Japanese sector, but not necessarily enough. So they come to us for that. And then we also have a Saturday class for students who are in the Japanese system but want to experience learning English in the way that you might if you're in a sort of an international setting. So we do that. We've got lots of things going on. We prior to COVID, we did holiday programs. We're just starting to set up our holiday programs for this year. It's been so difficult with the numbers kind of doing this show.
Is that what it did?
Yeah, we stopped during COVID doing our summer programs. Yeah.
Really? Oh, so the summer stopped.
Just the summer programs. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
But that happened with us too.
Yeah, it was just too risky.
There's no way you could do it.
No, it was too risky. So, but I think we'll do some this summer. We'll definitely have some in place for this summer. So that was Quest. But actually, the bigger reason I started Quest was because actually the bigger challenge that I found families had in Tokyo was finding support if their child had learning difficulties. And actually, my goal for Quest is for us, and I'll talk about this. We just launched this year. My goal was to start up a learning support hub for families. So and schools actually, because there's lots of people doing good work here. There's just not enough. There's just
not enough.
Fantastic people doing therapy and learning support. But of course, once they've got their quota of people that they can work with, there's not enough of that. So what I wanted to do was to set up Quest Learning Support and Therapy, a hub. And I had that on my 5-year plan. I wanted Quest to get going and to be, cash flow and all of those kinds of things, to be solid as a company. And then to start the what we're calling QLST, Quest Learning Support and Therapy. And we actually launched last September. We added another suite, if you like, another suite of services to what we were already doing with the exam prep and the tutoring. And we've been doing that this year. So we took on board a learning support therapist. We've just had a speech therapist join our team. And now when families come to us, the goal is for us to be a place where it's got two sides. The child's always in the middle. Families come to us because they need a consultation, they've got an issue, they can't find support, or they want to talk. We then consult with them. We will then do an assessment, most likely in school, or they can come to us for that. We then make recommendations, and then they can source the therapy they need from us as well. So if they need speech therapy, or if they need in-class support for social, executive functioning, or any of those kinds of things, they can source those from us as well. And they can also find community, because I think a lot of families are quite isolated. If you don't speak Japanese, it can be quite isolating to find.
If the child has an issue,
exactly.
Right.
So we're building up that community as well. So that's on the parent side. But then on the other side are schools, and this was some of the experience I had as an educator in Tokyo, that we went through periods of having absolutely fantastic educational psychology support because there was somebody in the parent community who was doing that. But then, of course, they would move on, and we would have 3 or 4 years. It was real kind of feast or famine type situation. Right. And so, what we want the hub to be as well, and this has started this year, and I'm pleased to say we're already supporting some schools that they can. One of the head teachers said to me, and I completely empathise with this, I want a red phone on my desk that I can pick up and say, Kirsten, we've got this, where should we go? And I totally get that. So that's what we are. Schools can contact us. They can say, we've got a child in class, can you come and watch? We've got permission from family, so on. Or, we've admitted a child who's got Down syndrome, can you come and do some training for our staff? We've got a child who's got, ADHD, can you come and watch and give us some tactics on how to integrate sort of different learning behaviours into our everyday work. And so we want to have those two sides, and that's what we've launched this year.
Are you bringing people in? Because I would think that the resource of people is the biggest thing. You have to get people that can do this, that are trained in that area. How are you getting it?
Very difficult. And
Can you bring them all?
Well, I would have done if we hadn't had COVID. And that's why that's been the biggest thing. Our speech and language therapist was due to arrive last summer, which was very exciting, but of course COVID has something else to say about that, and with Omicron coming through, it just paused all of the visas again. Just as they were starting in November, it went again. But she's arrived now and is already working with some of our clients, which is, and she's outstanding. I'm delighted to be working with her. We're going to expand our group to also have an occupational therapist, and in the longer run, and we can't do this yet because it's just a very expensive venture, is to have an educational psychologist on the team as well. We'll most likely do that in a remote type approach to begin with because of COVID, but in the end we'll have somebody on board who can do that too. But we've got a full-time learning support therapist on board, and he does a lot of he does after-school programs on social skills, and also works with students in school if they need one-to-one support on particularly the executive functioning and the social skill sides of things, which has been very successful this year, I'm pleased to say. And there's scope for that to grow. We'll be doing some of that stuff during the summer holidays as well. So that's actually where all my energies are going,
That's
developing
so
that. And also, I mean, I've been quite lucky that over the last couple of years, I've also been involved in the development of new schools here as well.
That's
so
right.
there's
See, I was under the impression that that was your school at the beginning. And most people think that, right?
Well, I'm the education advisor for the company that is developing those schools.
That's right.
And so I was very lucky last year to be involved with really starting a new school pretty much from scratch, alongside the team. Of course, it's not just me, but it was something quite special, and so I'm delighted that that's really successful. It fits so
perfectly with your own company.
Yeah. The thing is, Lance, I've just been, all the time I've been here, I've just been really fascinated with the education landscape here. For such an enormous city, and if you compared it to places like Singapore or Hong Kong, the school landscape is the only word I can use, but the landscape is quite different.
It's like out west. It's so sparse. It's very sparse.
And if you for particular curriculums, you've only got certain, if you want the American curriculum, you've really got ASIJ, and there's no options, which is fantastic as a business model, not quite so great as a parent if a school, British education as well, if it's only a particular type and you want something else. I always wanted people to choose BST and choose my primary school because they loved what we were doing, not because we were the only choice they had.
Right.
And I think choice is good.
That's right.
So, and particularly if schools are creating a niche for what their vision is and what their mission is, I think there's opportunity to develop.
That's what people miss most of the time, because Japan has so much abundance in so many ways. They find a lot of people coming here wanting to take, and that's it, and then they're gone.
Yeah. And actually, there's a lot of that in international education.
They see that. They come in, get what they can get, then they're out of here.
Yeah.
Japan doesn't play that.
No, and actually that's
they want you to, put down your stake, you're here.
Yeah, pay your taxes.
That's right, be here.
Be present. But I think there is room for the international scene to grow.
Of course there is.
And hopefully once the borders reopen and we start to see the influx of international families again, that community will
Well, I think we're seeing it through the building of these huge companies, Mori, Mitsubishi, all these companies need other people to come in because, as we know, the population is aging.
That's right.
They need them in here, but they're going to take their time. But just like they put the British school here, and the setup they give, they'll make it so that when you come here, you are set, but they expect you to stay.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
They're not doing it for play, but that layout they have there is going to be phenomenal.
I know, it's beautiful.
It is so beautiful.
It will be absolutely beautiful.
Kirsten, I wish you all you're going to do so well. There's no doubt about it. With your personality, with what I've seen when you were at the British school, what you're talking about now with Quest, you're going to go all the way, and I wish you all the luck. Before we end, I want to ask you, what do you consider, I asked you at the beginning too, but you had a chance to think a little bit about it. What do you consider a good life in Japan?
What do I consider a good life in Japan? The weather. Appreciating the weather. But I also, actually primarily, I think appreciating what Japan has to offer and how you give back to it. You've just mentioned, it's not about coming here and taking, because we don't play that game here. It doesn't feel like that game here. It's about embracing society and the behaviours and expectations of society here, I think are something that has really changed me, even changed the pitch of my voice, the volume of my voice, down to I feel very uncomfortable with my shoes on in here because there's carpet, all these kinds of things. So I think it's embracing all the beautiful things about Japanese behaviours and culture are what brings a good life here. And I think there's something to be said for the societal responsibility to each other here, which I love. I really love that. And I think that's what brings a happy life.
Kirsten, thank you so much.
It's
been a pleasure.
It's lovely to chat with you, Lance. Thank you.
I want to thank all of you for watching this podcast. Make sure you press like and subscribe. Please subscribe. I need as many subscribers as I can get. Remember, it's all unknown, so continue to reach for the stars And remember, you're too blessed to be stressed.